Now, this is one of the chats that I'm really keen to learn more about, starting a radio career with BFBS. And to talk to us about that, Sam Bailey and Jason Herbert.
Maybe Jason Herbert might like to join us. A bit of a typo in the programme, not Jason Herbert, Tom Payne. Are we all on? Can you hear me?
Hello.
I'm Sam, this is Tom. We're from BFBS. I'm the director of radio there, and Tom is one of our presenter producers. And we're very pleased to be invited to be here. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for a lovely lunch. We're going to talk for about 20 minutes, which hopefully will help the schedule get back on track. I'm going to start by just giving a bit of a rundown of how BFBS works, and then in conversation with Tom, who's one of our newest presenters and has joined us from Hot Radio in Poole about 4 months ago.
Yeah, 4 months ago.
To maybe dig in a little bit to Tom's journey and maybe inspire some other people in the room to think about BFBS, if not for themselves, but to pass on this opportunity to some of your volunteers or presenters that work with you who might be interested in a career. I'm perfectly aware that not everybody that works in community radio wants a career in radio, and I want to acknowledge that up front. I think the opportunity that we can provide is for those that do and are using community radio as an on-ramp, and I'd like to, if you like, pitch BFBS as the next step on those people's journey. So a little bit about, so that's us. So just a little bit about how we're organised. So every red blob on the map there, with the exception of Chalfont Grove, is a community radio FM licence in the UK. Chalfont Grove is our headquarters, where our global sustaining service comes from. But the FBS, I should have said it right at the top, British Forces Broadcasting Service. We exist to entertain, inform, connect and champion the British forces all over the world. So we are a massive community with 130,000 serving personnel in the UK, in the British Armed Forces, plus their families, plus veterans, plus members of the forces community at large. So we are in many ways a community of interest, a term that I'm sure you're familiar with, but also in some cases geographical communities as well. So this is our UK footprint. This is our global footprint. So again, we have 7 overseas FM stations in locations where there are particularly large concentrations of British military. We have a number of FM transmitters in other locations as well, but those are the 7 places where we have stations and where we have personnel. So I'm responsible for people in 20 different sites, and Tom is based at one of those in Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire. But is very soon to go on his overseas journey, and I'll explain a little bit more about how that works shortly. But first of all, how we organise the network. I mentioned Chalfont Grove, which is our headquarters in Buckinghamshire. Out of there, we run what we call internally, it's not an external brand, the Global Sustaining Service. So that's the spine of the station. If all of the other local stations fell off the air, the transmitters would receive this feed. And then each of the local stations opts out to do their own local shows, and then opts back into the network. So first of all, we have a national DAB Plus radio station. You can get that on the Sound Digital Multiplex for those of you that are into your muxes. But it's a DAB on your DAB Plus radio, and so there's a national UK breakfast show. So that's how the UK station slightly differs from Global Sustain. And then in our FM locations in the UK, we opt out for a local breakfast show and a local afternoon show. The little white asterisk on there is to show you breakfast, and this gets important now because we're about to go into the time zones, and breakfast is a different time. So the times across the top there are UK times. So then we get into the overseas stations, who again generally they all opt out for their own breakfast show, and they might opt out for other shows during the day as well. So quite a complicated network of how we knit it all together, but essentially think of that sustained service as a spine, as a sort of spine running down the middle, and the local stations opt out when it's right for them. So here's a clip.
This is BFBS, Commander Forces Station.
Sergeant Brad Wilkins, and I'm a tank commander.
You've just allowed me to go into a tank, which I'm not going to lie was really cool.
very small.
On the times that you've done the demonstration, have you ever come out with leech, or have you ever come face to face with a crocodile?
Obviously, leech, you cannot get it up. With regards to crocodile, this area, we haven't seen any, but we used to do that in all the rivers, and definitely we have seen some crocodiles there.
Oh, it's a massive honour. It's something that, although they might see another coronation in their lifetime, they probably won't see another coronation whilst they're in the military. So to be part of it out here in front of Colchester, it's a really good feeling.
This year, Busted are celebrating their 20th anniversary. So how does that make you feel, just hearing that?
It's kind of weird, because it kind of feels like it should be 20 years, and I can't believe it's 20 years. I love the fact you called me Matt from Busted, which is my formal title.
No one's forced to wear a poppy, that's your democratic right, but you have that democratic right because of the sacrifices made by our armed forces.
I'm Captain Mike Brady. I'm with the 20th Bomb Squadron out of Barksdale, Louisiana. Brought one of the B-52Hs over here for Rian.
Can I just tell you that, as an aviation geek, this is possibly the best day of my life.
This is BFBS. Forces Station. Your Forces soundtrack.
So that's just a snapshot of some of the sort of forces-oriented speech content that you'd hear on our services, and those are collected from across our various stations. And I'll explain a little bit more about how those are collected by people in my team, like Tom. But just a little bit about what the station is, in case you've not listened to it, which I don't know why you would have done. It is roughly 70% music, 30% speech. Just, you know, the demographic, we are a community of interest, right? We are not focusing on an age group and on a sort of professional kind of demographic. That said, the majority of serving personnel in the British military are under 35. 40% of them are in their 20s. So it does skew younger. It is pop music. It's a sort of last 3.5 decades kind of playlist. And so it has new music every week, but it also has quite a lot of recurrence from sort of 90s and 80s, noughties, 90s and 80s as well. And 30% speech. The music is programmed centrally, and we also have a fresh new music feature every week to bring new music into the station. And then the speech content, there's entertainment content. You had an interview with Matt from Busted there, but also predominantly stories from the local community and the forces world. And Tom will explain a bit more about how that works. News on the hour, plus we have 5 10-minute extended news bulletins throughout the 24-hour clock, and those are dominated by forces news. So if you were to listen to a BFBS bulletin, it will differ to a Sky and IRN bulletin by having quite a lot of focus on defence, as you might expect. And then in terms of the main role that I'm recruiting to generally, and I've got about 45 of these, presenter producers. So presenter producers are the bedrock of the team and of the output, and they are, generally speaking, kind of all doing the same thing but in different locations. So they present a daily 3-hour show, that's Monday to Friday. They present either the breakfast show or an afternoon show. They'll be gathering content on their patch. So Tom is gathering content in Salisbury Plain. Now, that in the first instance will be for his show on Salisbury Plain. But that will also go in the central bucket, where we have a coordination centrally of HQ that goes, oh, actually, this might be of interest to everybody else, so it might go out on that sustaining service, or this might be of particular interest to the guys out in Germany because it's about tanks, or the guys in Blandford because it's about tanks. So there's content sharing based on what the content is. And here's the career path, and this is where we segue into Tom. So when we hire you, you start out in the UK, 6 to 12 months at one of those community radio stations based in the UK. And generally we're asking people to relocate because we might hire you from Sunderland but need you in Salisbury Plain, and that's just like any job. You go and get a house flat share somewhere, or we ask you to move to go and cut your teeth on one of our local stations. And then you tour the forces world. So we send you out on tour, roughly 2 years of 3 to 6 month placements in each of those locations. So you're travelling solo, you're travelling unaccompanied. This does mean it tends to favour people who are footloose and fancy free, which does tend to kind of skew the demographic a little, as you can imagine. But you're living on a military base, you're living and working as part of the community that you are serving. So you're absorbing so much about the forces world as you go on this tour. and then you will then get what we call the posting. So that might be 2 to 4 years in one location. If you're married, or if you're married by then, your spouse can be with you, you can bring your pets, that sort of thing. So it's a bit of we ask people to commit their lifestyle to this job, and so that does narrow our field somewhat. It does mean that we're looking for people that have that flexibility in their life. Which brings me on to Tom.
Hello.
We were very lucky that Tom applied for a job with us about 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's right. Back in April now.
And was very pleased that Tom joined us. So I thought for the rest of the next 15 minutes, to just kind of talk through Tom's experience, and that might give you a little bit of food for thought about either yourself or volunteers or other people in your station that you might like to suggest get in touch with us. So, Tom, can you start by kind of explaining how you fell in love with radio, because it's a fantastic story.
Yeah, so my love for radio, as bright and positive and beautiful as it is, it comes from a very dark place, if I'm being completely honest. So back in 2021, I'd been working in the construction industry for about 3 years at this point. And if we're being honest, it caused quite a few different mental health issues amongst myself, and I tried lots of different things to solve these. I've tried therapy, I've tried taking up physical exercise, I've done everything I could think of. And although they would stop me from reaching a certain boiling point, they'd never really make me feel better completely. And it just happened one day, because I used to be a trucker here in Poole and Bournemouth, it just happened one day the Bluetooth in my truck broke. The worst thing ever at the time, because I wasn't actually a big fan of radio when that happened. I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to tune into the radio. So I tuned into Radio 1, and the first thing I listened to was Scott Mills and Chris Stark, and they were talking to a farmer called Dickie. And I don't know what it was about it, they were just having a nice chat, they were being friends, and it made me smile, it started making me laugh. And it started making me laugh for the first time in quite a long time. And I thought, you know what, that was really good, I'm going to tune into them every day. And so I did, I started tuning in every day to the Radio 1 afternoon show, and I started hearing other presenters, and I thought, they're really funny too, I'd quite like to listen to them. And before you knew it, I was listening to every show on the Radio 1 schedule. I knew all the presenters, they were celebrities, they were heroes to me. I was that obsessed listener that we all know fairly well.
So you became a Radio 1 super nerd, and then you became a recurring character almost on the Greg James show.
So I became this character called Tom the Trucker from Dorset. I started getting loads of shout outs. Almost every time I listened in, I'd get a shout out. And I then started getting on the phone almost once a week to Radio 1. It was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this, I loved it. And that really is where my love for radio came from, because I woke up one morning and I realised actually all the mental health issues that I'd been having before I was listening to the radio, they were gone now. That the listening to the radio brought back a confidence and a sort of spark in me that nothing else had managed to do. So that's how I fell in love with radio.
Radio saves lives, guys. So you did what many people do at that stage, which you call the bug. Is you started hospital radio, right? And then you made your way onto community radio. So what did those voluntary roles teach you?
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning a shout out to Hot and HRB and also Radio Wimbledon that are all here today. Those are the 3 big stations in the area which I volunteered for. I think the things that I really learned were the nuts and bolts of radio. With Hot Radio, for instance, I got so much time on air, I was able to pick up just really basic skills that I needed, and I got a lot of mentoring from all the stations. From HRB, it's definitely worth mentioning, I got a lot of training in the technical side of doing radio, as in using the hardware and the software, and that was really important then later on being able to apply for a job at BFBS and just being competent enough to get that job.
How did you identify BFBS as somewhere to apply to? What made it stand out for you?
So for me, really the options were between going down the commercial radio, and I mean the big commercial radio group of Bureau and Global and all that, or trying to stick with public service. And I really wanted to stick with public service broadcasting, just because I think we're able to help people a lot more without trying to offend commercial radio. And that was something that really convinced me about BFBS. And then also the travel opportunities were just huge. Being able to travel the world while working and getting paid to do that. And also being looked after, that's such a big advantage. So that's why I chose BFBS really.
And your commitment to the public service side of radio and the power of radio to connect people really came through when we were interviewing you in the recruitment process. Can you, for the benefit of the room, can you explain the recruitment process that we put you through?
Yeah, so there are 3 phases in our recruitment process. The first phase is quite simple. It's a demo, which is 3 minutes long. This might change, which I'm sure Sam can correct me.
It's a demo of your own best bits.
Yeah, a demo of your own best bits, and it'll be about 3 minutes long with 3 music links, and then 1 speech bit, which should be a speech package you've created or an interview that you've done, and you'll also send off a CV and stuff like that. Once you've done that, if you get through to the second phase, it will be an interview online with the management of BFBS, and you're really asked to focus in on what BFBS do through their output and critique their output, which is something I had to do. And for my own personal reference, I try to bring everything back to our mission statement, which is connect, champion, entertain, and inform the armed forces world, essentially. So that's what I try to do.
And I've never known, I'm going to blow smoke now, but I've never known somebody come to a job interview as prepared as Tom came to his job interview. And I've a career at the BBC before I was at BFBS. I've been recruiting for 20 years, and I've never known somebody come knowing their... Like, Tom was telling us how many personnel and vehicles there are in Salisbury Plain. I learned stuff from Tom. Honestly, prep. I mean, he's an absolute kind of model for that. You've now got a daily show on BFBS Salisbury Plain. You're currently covering breakfast, in fact. Can you describe the other work that you do?
Yeah, so once I've done the show, we've got office hours as presenters, and in that time we will use that time, 1, to prepare for the next show, so every link will be planned out with a start, a middle, and end in our show wheel. But we'll also be reaching out to the wider community quite a lot, and we'll use that time to record interviews with them, find out about local events that we can push over the air. And I also spend a lot of my time editing now, as it turns out, which is enjoyable. I enjoy it.
And I'm going to do 2 more questions, Jason. I know we're running over, but I've got 2 more questions. We've already told you that we're going to send you overseas on your tour from next year. Is that daunting?
I think it would be really naive to say it wasn't daunting. I think, of course it's daunting. I'm going to be moving across the world for a couple of years, and I'll be going to different places. So it is absolutely daunting, but it's more exciting than it is daunting, because the opportunity to learn from such a great team, because when you're overseas you're part of a bigger team, because you'll have all the overseas stations have bigger teams, so you're able to learn from lots of experience, and you're also in your own personal life able to experience a lot more of the world as well. So it is daunting, and I am scared, but I am more excited than I am scared.
That's a good way around to be. And you know, when you're overseas, you're accommodated in the officers' mess. You get 3 square meals a day, dining with the officers, and as I say, you're living and working as part of the community. So you might do your office day, and you know, everybody at BFBS is a full member of staff. It's not freelance. You're full member of staff and all the benefits, that pension and salary and so on. But quite often when you're overseas, you're then doing stuff in the evening because that's your social community as well, and you might as well take your microphone along with you. So it's a really immersive kind of lifestyle experience. So I hope it is more exciting than daunting. Just what are your longer term career plans? And it's okay for you to say that you will leave BFBS one day, because I fully expect that, because you're going to fly. But what are you using this as a sort of on-ramp?
So if I really quickly try and list off from now till maybe 10 years in the future, right now I'm looking forward to going overseas, learn as much as I can, build on my own experience. In a couple of years, and I am saying this in front of my boss, I would like to make way onto our big DAB network slot at some point in my life. I'm really passionate about that. And then again, I'm saying this in front of my boss, if it's definitely an ambition of mine to maybe break way into other public service broadcasting, like for instance Radio 1, things like that. But for me, I'm thinking, you know, in 10 years time.
I think we all know that there's a great big black hole in the what was the traditional career talent pipeline, you know, trajectory, where you might start off with volunteering, hospital radio, or whatever, and then you might get a job in a small commercial station, then a medium commercial station, then a regional commercial. And none of those exist anymore. There is basically a big leap from being a volunteer to having a big job somewhere. And I hope that BFBS can be part of filling that gap and providing opportunities to people and the fantastic people that work at your stations. If anybody would like to read a bit more about it, if you just were to Google express your interest BFBS, there's a page where you can read a little bit more about the job, and you can upload your demo. So I listen to demos all year round. That's the way to send them through. And if there are ones that we identify that we think are worth having a conversation with, we'll make contact. and then we're recruiting, usually, for last year we recruited 3 or 4 times a year because it's quite a large team, so there's quite a lot of churn and people move on. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you.